So now we'll talk about the final part of acid-base disorders. We'll talk about metabolic acidosis today. But before that, I want to tell you something about the anion gap. So anion gap, it is given by the equation sodium minus chloride plus bicarbonate. And if I say what is corrected anion gap, so corrected anion gap is equals to anion gap plus 2.5 multiplied by normal serum albumin, that is 4.5 minus actual serum albumin. Now why it is important to calculate the corrected anion gap? Because for every 1 gram per deciliter decrease in serum albumin, there is rise in anion gap by 2.5 millimoles per liter. And the normal value of anion gap is 6 to 12 millimoles per liter. And the optimal value is 10 millimoles per liter. So now we'll discuss what are the causes of increase in anion gap, decrease in anion gap and normal anion gap. So first of all, we'll talk about the conditions in which we have increased anion gap. So anion gap increases with an increase in unmeasured anions. Okay. If there is an increase in unmeasured anions, which could be albumin, phosphate, sulfate, acid anions, okay, or if there is a decrease in unmeasured cations. So remember, anion gap increases with increasing anions, be it phosphate, sulfate, albumin or acids. So first of all, we'll talk about the conditions which are associated with accumulation of acid anions. So if I talk about the condition in which there is accumulation of endogenous acid anions in extracellular fluid, so they are lactic acidosis, in which there is an accumulation of lactate, or ketoacidosis, in which there is an accumulation of beta hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. Now be it diabetic ketoacidosis or alcoholic ketoacidosis or starvation ketoacidosis. Now there can be accumulation of exogenous acid anions also, like if we have patient who has taken overdose of salicylic acid, or if there is a toxic alcohol ingestion like methanol, ethanol, ethylene glycol, propylene glycol. So all of these conditions can result in this increased anion gap metabolic acidosis, because they in turn result in production of organic acids like ethylene glycol, that results in the formation of oxalic acid and glycolic acid. Similarly, methanol, that results in the formation of formic acid. So they result in the production of organic acids, which when accumulates result in increase in anion gap. Okay, so we have salicylates and toxic alcohol ingestion. Okay, now there one thing is there is an accumulation of acid anions. Another possibility could be that there is under secretion of net acid by the kidney, that occurs in patients of advanced CKD, which is also called as uremic state. So there is accumulation of endogenous acid anions due to their decreased excretion by the kidney. So there is decreased excretion of acid by kidneys in patients with advanced CKD. Now apart from that, I have told you albumin is a very important unmeasured anion. So if there is an increase in albumin, okay, again that will result in increase in anion gap. Okay, so that's why it is important to calculate the corrected anion gap. Now what are the conditions in which there is decrease in unmeasured cations? So if there is hypocalcemia, so calcium is an unmeasured anion. Similarly, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, all of these conditions can result in increase in anion gap. Now we'll talk about the conditions in which we have decreased anion gap. So again, decreased anion gap, I've told you anion gap increases when there is an increase in unmeasured anions. So similarly, it decreases when there is a decrease in unmeasured anions, or if there is an increase in unmeasured cations. So it's very easy to remember that anion gap increases if anions increases, okay, and cations decreases. So what are the conditions in which we can have decrease in unmeasured anions? So I've told you again, albumin being an important unmeasured anion, so the conditions which are associated with hypoalbuminemia. Like patients with chronic liver disease, or malabsorption, or nephrotic syndrome. Okay, and the conditions which are associated with an increase in unmeasured cations like hypercalcemia, hyperkalemia, hypermagnesemia, or if there is an addition of abnormal cations, right? If there is an addition of abnormal cations like lithium. So in a patient of lithium toxicity, you can have decreased anion gap. Similarly, paraproteinemias or plasma cell dyscrasias, because there is an increase in immunoglobulins, which are cations. So if there is plasma cell dyscrasias, so that results in increase in cationic immunoglobulins. So that is the reason you come across decreased anion gap in a patient of multiple myeloma. Similarly, Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. So all plasma cell disorders which increase the cationic immunoglobulins can result in decrease in anion gap. Okay, and there is another condition in which you can have decreased anion gap like severe hyperlipidemia or hyperviscosity, because there is an underestimation of sodium and chloride. Okay, so I'll just write it here only. If there is hyperlipidemia or hyperviscosity, so because of underestimation of sodium and chloride, there is decreased anion gap. So these are the conditions in which you can have decreased anion gap. Now, if the conditions which are classically associated with normal anion gap are renal tubular acidosis, and if there is a bicarbonate loss from GIT like diarrhea. Now, why does normal anion gap occurs in these conditions? Because the loss of bicarbonate is equals to rise in chloride. Okay, so if there is a decrease in bicarbonate, so similar degree of rise occurs in chloride. So overall, the anion gap that is maintained. Okay, so these are the conditions which are associated with hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. So there is increase in chloride levels, which compensates for the fall in bicarbonate. So now, as if we had talked about the anion gap, we will talk about two important concepts. One is delta gap. So delta gap is delta anion gap minus delta bicarbonate. Delta means change. Okay, so delta anion gap is anion gap, what is actual patient's anion gap, minus 10, and delta bicarbonate is 25 minus what is actual plasma bicarbonate. So what if this ratio, if this gap is more than 6? So what are its implications? So usually in a patient with high anion gap metabolic acidosis, as I've told you that high anion gap term is often used in the context of metabolic acidosis. So usually in high anion gap metabolic acidosis, the rise in anion gap is equal to the fall in bicarbonate, because one molecule of acid combines with one molecule of bicarbonate. Okay, so bicarbonate is expected to fall at the same rate as the anion gap rises. Okay, but what if it is more than 6? If the delta gap is more than 6, that suggests that the rise in anion gap is more than the fall in bicarbonate. Now when will it happen? Okay, it will happen when a patient has pre-existing bicarbonate level more than the normal. Okay, if we say the normal value is 24 millimoles per liter, but if a patient has pre-existing 30 millimoles per liter, like if a patient has pre-existing chronic respiratory acidosis, so you know, chronic respiratory acidosis, there is carbon dioxide retention, and bicarbonate is retained as a compensatory mechanism. To compensate for the rise in PCO2, bicarbonate is also retained. So pre-existing bicarbonate level is more than normal, say it is 30. Okay, so even if it falls by 10, so there is apparent fall of only 4, because I have told you the normal value is 24, and in chronic respiratory acidosis, if it becomes 30, so even it falls by 10 to 20. If it becomes 20, so apparent will be only 4, 24 to 20, right? So if there is pre-existing higher level of bicarbonate, so the apparent fall be less, and the anion gap rather would increase more. So this gap will become more than 6. Similarly, in a patient who is having pre-existing metabolic alkalosis, say if there is a patient of alcoholic ketoacidosis and he starts vomiting, so there is, because of loss of HCl from the body, he goes into alkalosis. So because of alkalosis, bicarbonate will increase, and because of pre-existing acidosis, it will decrease. So it does not decrease as much as it should decrease, because there is concomitant alkalosis which is rather increasing the bicarbonate levels, right? Similarly, if there is a patient of advanced CKD who is having uremic high anion gap metabolic acidosis and he starts vomiting, so he again develops alkalosis. So because of alkalosis, bicarbonate will rise. Okay, so it will not appear to decrease as much as the anion gap rises. Okay, so this gap will become more than 6. I hope it is clear. Okay, so in a patient who is having metabolic acidosis, we are talking about high anion gap metabolic acidosis here, plus chronic respiratory acidosis. Similarly, if there is a patient of metabolic acidosis, again high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus metabolic alkalosis. Okay, now let me tell you very important that why anion gap is so important. The high anion gap is significant clinically even if the pH or bicarbonate is normal. Say if we take the example of metabolic acidosis plus metabolic alkalosis, the pH can be normal, but if there is a high anion gap, you must calculate this delta gap in order to look for mixed acid base disorders. Similarly, if somebody is having metabolic acidosis with chronic respiratory acidosis, bicarbonate can be normal or even higher. Okay, but if there is a high anion gap, you must look for this delta gap in order to find out such kind of mixed acid base disorders, right? So what if this gap is less than 6? If this gap is less than 6, that suggests that the rise in anion gap is less than the fall in bicarbonate. Particularly if it is if this gap is too less, so that suggests that the rise in anion gap is less than the fall in bicarbonate. So when will it happen? It will happen if somebody is having combination of high anion gap metabolic acid plus normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Very easy to understand, because in each of these conditions there is fall in bicarbonate, but the rise in anion gap occurs only in HGMA. Okay, so both conditions causing fall in bicarbonate, only one condition causing increase in anion gap, so the apparent increase in anion gap will be less than the fall in bicarbonate, so this ratio becomes negative. Okay, less than 6. So this is the importance of delta gap. There is another term which we call as delta ratio. Again a similar concept. Here we take delta anion gap over delta bicarbonate. Again delta anion gap is patient's anion gap minus 10 over 25 minus what is actual plasma bicarbonate. So what are the implications? If it is less than 0.4, 0.4 to 0.8, 0.8 to 2 and more than 2. So if it is less than 0.4, then patient is having pure non-anion gap metabolic acidosis. Here it is non-anion gap or normal anion gap metabolic acidosis plus high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Here it is pure high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Here it is high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus concomitant metabolic alkalosis or chronic respiratory acidosis. So again, easy to understand. If the ratio is less than 0.4, that means you are dealing with pure normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, because as the name itself says that it is normal anion gap. So if it is normal anion gap, so normal anion gap we take it as 10. Okay, the optimal value is 10. So 10 minus 10, this will be equal to 0. So if this ratio is close to 0, that means you are dealing with pure normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. Okay, now I have told you that the range is 8 to 12. So say if it is 12, then also 12 minus 10, 2. So numerator will be too small in comparison to denominator. So again the ratio will be less than 0.4. Okay, now this is another important thing. If this ratio is more than 2, that means your patient is having high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus either metabolic alkalosis or chronic respiratory acidosis. Now when will be the ratio more than 2? When numerator is too large and denominator is too small. When will the denominator be too small? Again, if the patient is having pre-existing plasma bicarbonate level more than normal, so the fall will be too less. Okay, so say if the patient I've told you, like in a patient of chronic respiratory acidosis, if the plasma bicarbonate as a compensation is 30 and even it falls by 10, so it becomes 20. So the apparent fall will be only 5. But in comparison to this, the anion gap, the rise in anion gap is much larger. So numerator is larger, denominator is too small, so this ratio will be more than 2. Similarly for metabolic alkalosis also, right? I have told you that the pre-existing bicarbonate level will be, it will increase. Okay, so this is about it. Now if somebody is having 0.2 to 2, then you are dealing with pure high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Usually in high anion gap metabolic, pure high anion gap metabolic acidosis, the fall in bicarbonate is expected to be at a similar rate as that of anion gap. Okay, the bicarbonate is expected to fall at a similar rate as the anion gap rises. So this ratio should be equal to 1, because one molecule of acid anion combines with one molecule of bicarbonate. So if numerator and denominator both are falling at the same rate, so this ratio should be equal to 1. But because acid anions, they are unable to diffuse out of the bloodstream, while bicarbonate they easily diffuse out of the bloodstream. So this becomes little, this denominator becomes little smaller and denominator is larger. So this ratio is, that's why from 1 to 2, from 0.8 to 2. You get my point? Ideally it should be 1. Like in a patient of diabetic ketoacidosis, this ratio is usually equal to 1, and in a patient of lactic acidosis, this is usually 1.6. Okay, so remember, in high anion gap metabolic acidosis, you have close to 1. In normal anion gap metabolic acid, it is close to 0. And if it is more than 2, so you are dealing with either concomitant metabolic alkalosis or chronic respiratory acidosis. And if it is 0.4 to 0.8, that means both normal anion gap metabolic acidosis plus high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Okay, so this is one thing. Now we'll come to our main topic, that is metabolic acidosis. But before that, another concept I want to tell you about, that is osmolar gap. So what is osmolar gap? First of all, you need to know how we calculate the plasma osmolality. So plasma osmolality is given by the equation 2 sodium plus glucose upon 18 plus blood urea nitrogen O upon 2.8. So normally sodium, glucose and blood urea nitrogen, they contributes to the plasma osmolality. But if this calculated plasma osmolality is less than the measured plasma osmolality, and the difference is more than, okay, if this calculated osmolality is less than measured osmolality by 10 to 15 millimoles per kg of water. So if there is a difference, if this difference in measured osmolality minus calculated osmolality is more than this, okay, so that suggests that either the sodium level is spuriously low, like in patients of severe hyperproteinemia or hyperlipidemia, this sodium level will be spuriously low, or there is accumulation of osmolytes other than these three osmolytes, right? Normally what we assume that they contribute to the osmolality by and large, okay, but if there is an accumulation of osmolytes other than these osmolytes, so the measured osmolality will be more and the calculated osmolality would be less, right? So what are the conditions in which we can have this? So we have one, I have told you, if this sodium is spuriously low, so again this calculated osmolality will be lower than the actual osmolality. So if sodium is spuriously low, like in a patient of severe hyperproteinemia and hyperlipidemia, these are the causes of pseudo hyponatremia, or if there is accumulation of osmolytes other than sodium, glucose and blood urea nitrogen. Now that will happen, say if there is an accumulation of ethanol, methanol, acetone, ethylene glycol, propylene glycol, isopropyl alcohol, okay. Similarly, mannitol, radio contrast media, okay. So osmolar gap is said to be high if the difference in measured osmolality and calculated osmolality is more than 10 to 15 milliosmol per kg, right? So we will discuss subsequently that why it is important to calculate the osmolar gap, particularly in the setting of toxic alcohol ingestions, right? Because there is increased osmolar gap in such conditions. Now we'll talk a bit about the clinical features of metabolic acidosis. So as you all know, metabolic acidosis, there is pH is low, okay, and bicarbonate is also low. So as a composition, PCO2 is also low. So because of the fall in pH, okay, there is increased ventilation, particularly there is increase in tidal volume. So that results in a particular pattern of breathing which is called as Kussmaul respiration, okay, Kussmaul breathing. So what are the clinical features of metabolic acidosis? So I have told you, as a result of fall in pH, there occurs increase in ventilation, especially the tidal volume, which is called as Kussmaul respiration. And in severe metabolic acidosis, the cardiac contractility is depressed. So depressed cardiac contractility. So patient can have hypotension. Similarly, there is depressed cognition. Okay, the depressed CNS function. So that's why it is very important to correct severe acidemia. Like patient can have headache, lethargy, stupor, even coma. And there is a tendency for pulmonary edema even with minimal volume overload, right? Because there is decreased central and pulmonary vascular compliance, so there is tendency for pulmonary edema. So these are the consequences of metabolic acidosis. That's why it is important to correct severe acidemia, right? Now we'll talk about in general the metabolic acidosis, its causes. Okay.